To kickstart the day, we have an exciting and dynamic panel discussion on driving process reinvention for enterprise through Agentic AI.
The larger theme, as you've heard already, is driving process reinvention for enterprises through Agentic AI. So there are two or three components to it. So one is, of course, trying to understand or lay out what is process reinvention in the context of artificial intelligence, which is something that's obviously well upon us. And then comes the concept of Agentic AI. How does it work? How are companies beginning to use it? How are they looking at it today in their own businesses? Because you'll hear from very different businesses. You'll hear from a tire company and Alco-Bev company, financial services, or other a venture capital, private equity company. And then you'll also hear from a shoe company. So each company will look at this differently, and I think it'll be interesting for you and for me to understand how all of this will work. So thank you all once again, and let me start off with Raghu. So Raghu, you've been in this world for more than 20 years. So tell us about this transition, technology, AI, and what we're going to talk about more specifically today, that's Agentic AI.
So having been in this industry this as in the IT industry, for more than 2 decades, I've seen multiple waves. Of course, the first one that some of you may not know, but people on this stage would know, was clearly the Y2K time-bound wave that we saw. Subsequently, we saw all of the dot-com boom and so on. But more recently, it's been data, cloud, automation, etc. What feels different this time with AI, especially with Gen AI and Agentic AI, is the depth of questions and we're getting from the clients is very different from what it used to be in the past. Now, all of us on the stage and many of us have seen what these tools can do, right? So it's no longer a big secret that, yes, Gen AI can write significant amount of code. It is no longer a secret that you feed a 100-page document and it can synthesize that in just a few minutes. Or you ask for it to create a campaign for you and it can create a marketing campaign for you. I think the curiosity, therefore, is no longer in how this tech works. It's in how do we use this tech to reinvent our company and try and stay more relevant. Now, as we go through the several boardroom discussions or other senior leadership discussions with the client, the questions are getting tougher, obviously, and bolder as well as to what do we do with this. The key question that's coming from most clients is that how do we take this technology to and scale it while not compromising on compliance, data privacy, and of course, brand trust, right? Because if you use generative AI, et cetera, to build something, and if it has any issue, then it could impact a brand in a significant way. So those are the kinds of questions we're getting. And we see the same thing translating in all of the industries. Now, yesterday I was speaking about the banking industry. Now, if you go to the banking industry, the CEOs are saying, and another thing that we see because of generative AI and agentic AI is they're not trying to reinvent or redesign a single process at a time, but trying to look at how processes are interlinked as well. So if you go to the bank, the CEOs, for example, are saying, how do you re-engineer our lending and compliance together so that we stay relevant and the process can stay relevant even when the regulations are changing on a regular basis. So it's about how do you scale AI in this process, at the same time not add any additional risk to the bank itself. If you go to a consumer goods company, for example, we would think trade promotions and marketing as one thing and supply chain is another one. But they're saying combine these two and think about that so that you design a process where your promotions and your inventory are working in tandem using those agents so that you can quickly recreate a campaign based on how you see the behavior in a particular region, particular market, and so on. So that's one thing. So I think in summary, I would say the buzz in the boardrooms is not about trying to understand what this can do, but how do we use this one to reinvent the way we operate ourselves inside the company. It's going to affect our processes, it's going to affect our people, our culture, and how do we externally redesign our enterprise so that it can remain very agile. I want to close with just maybe 1 or 2 statements about Accenture. Accenture is doing exactly the same. We are reinventing ourselves internally first, and in parallel also working with our clients, right? But we're reinventing how we operate. You must have heard the recent announcements on reinvention services. We're bringing multiple services together so that our agility in serving our clients becomes significant. They can bring strategy, consulting, tech, etc., a lot more seamlessly and a lot more quickly to our clients as we go through this journey. So we are expecting the same thing from our clients.
So what would you say was the toughest question that you had to face? And would it be in the context of banking and financial services or elsewhere?
No, I think all industries are grappling with the art of the possible. So I wouldn't pick a specific industry and say this question was tougher than the other one. I think the toughest question for all organizations, including for Accenture, would be how do you transform yourself internally? You know, this people angle. And when you take large companies, systems have been there for years. Processes have been there for years. So how do you now rejig the whole thing, think entirely differently? You know, running processes sequentially versus maybe you run a process, break down, take a few stages out, run them asynchronous, and still achieve the same outcome. So I think the redesign of your enterprise is a lot more
Right.
complex.
Gunjan, tell us about your work at Bata. You've been working on, hyper personalization. The way you use technology or trying to use maybe a little different from other types of consumer-facing companies. So tell us about your journey.
If you look at even, let's say about 8 or 9 months back, we did actually a workshop in the organization, right, about the top 70 management leaders, etc. were there. And obviously the strategy and the information technology function organized it, right, brought in partners, including people like Accenture, etc., right, and some of the other software services companies also, and brought in various products, right, to try and first and foremost even acclimatize people that this is the kind of possibilities that are there. Even that people are struggling with, imagining what AI can do, and not only agentic, but also the previous version of generative and predictive, right? So I think that itself unlocks a lot of stuff. And then if, let's say, if, in any other case, if the team is given enough freedom and empowerment, then obviously, solutions emerge, business impact and use cases emerge, and therefore then the investments flow behind it. From a hyper-personalization point of view, I think there are multiple cases, and that's been, I think, under the journey for, I would say, at least 3 to 5 years now. Right, so one is basically outreach to consumers. Now with the digital mediums available, in various ways you are able to target consumers directly, right? In clusters as well as literally 1:1, targeting Govind himself. So that's, I think, one big piece, whether it's in communication platforms on social media or whether it's in, individual platforms like WhatsApp or SMS and emails, etc., right? So how do we segment consumers? What is your preferences and choices? What's your history with us, engagement? And therefore, what is it that we can customize as offers and, whatever communications to you? The second big piece that's there is almost about 5,000 to about 10,000 consumers reach out to us every day. The point is, how can we make sure that we give them a seamless experience which is unified all across, right? So they interact with us on multiple platforms, whether it's on online platforms, in our stores, going back histories, multiple banners, as well as in marketplaces, right? So how can we make sure that the person who is being reached out to in our, from our customer service point of view, how can that person have a unified understanding of what, Govind is looking for, and therefore what is his history, and therefore provide a customized solution. The last piece that is there is basically, I would say, in terms of even designing, I would love to see a scenario wherein I can actually maybe come, hypothetically, let's say, give you an autonomous tool which can allow you to design your own shoe for yourself, right? And I don't think it's impossible, just that we got to figure out how to go about doing it. So that's the approach, right?
And how would you describe a quintessential Bata consumer of today?
It would be around the age of about 30 to 35, equally balanced male, female, upper middle class, and across, I would say, SEC, A, B, C.
Would you say that most of these are more brand loyal compared to other brands?
We have repeat ratios of almost about 65%. So yeah, so there is a brand loyalty which is pretty large.
And generational, is it?
No, it's not generational. 30, 35 is not generational. But yes, there are consumers which are there. So obviously there are a whole bunch of consumers which are multi-generational also, right? So you have, I have a case just yesterday where we had developed a shoe for a consumer whose grandfather was also a consumer, right? So, but this kid had a specific problem and we had to solve some kind of a specific issue on his flat foot, etc., right? So it just gives you that feeling that yes, some of the consumers are multi-generational. If a brand is there for, let's say, almost a century now, another 6 years we'll celebrate a century. right? Obviously, consumers are spreading across generations.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I was talking to Suresh Narayanan of Nestle just last week. Now he's, of course, he's stepped down. But, the brand life of, let's say, a Maggi or even a Nescafe is way beyond what one would have expected. So the question is really, how do companies manage to keep that glue going for so long? But that's a different discussion. Suresh, let me come to you. So tell us about how you are seeing this whole transition and what are the challenges that companies are facing and will face.
First of all, I'm very impressed with the fact that you have a level of customer information that you can track 65%, reorder thing. It's impressive. There is no conversation, I guess, over the last 1.5 year where we've met our clients and we haven't talked about it, right? I would say the start of the whole cycle, the wave was around productivity, right? What can I get out of it, right? It was simply seen as a bottom line thing. It was clearly a case of, okay, Accenture, what can you do for us, right? It is sort of almost on those kind of things. Fundamentally a productivity play. But I think it's clear over the last year or so, I think there is a lot more practical application with respect to agentic and in terms of its play in process reinvention. I mean, you were asking Raghu the question on what has been one of the trickiest industries. I had a conversation a month and a half back with a company in Saudi, construction. And they wanted to talk digital transformation and process reinvention with AI. It was very impressive what the team put together end to end, all the way starting from tendering to design to construction to handover, the entire thing in terms of how the process can be reinvented across the board. It was really fascinating. And that is in what intuitively is an industry which you would think is probably going to be less disrupted by it. And you see this across the board, consumer goods, automotive, every single place, that is actually where our conversations are. And it isn't about, I have 10 steps, say in accounts receivable process, or 10 steps in a supply chain process, and how do I automate, say 6 out of 10, in the past I probably did 4 out of 10, can I do now 7 out of 10? It isn't about that anymore. Yes, maybe that too, but it is more about, can I parallelize any of these? And therefore, can I actually change the way we operate, right? Now that needs a bit of rewiring of how the companies have fundamentally visualized their processes. Now these are not easy, right? And some of these look fantastic on paper, right? And sounds very intuitive. The question is, how do you actually get it working with the teams? And I think that is actually where we see our role as well. It is to translate that vision and what looks good on paper to see how can we work hand in hand with the clients to make that happen. So there is 2 things, helping clients visualize what's the art of possible with focus on reinvention, but 2, how do you make it happen, right? The first part, I would say full throttle, everybody's on it. The second part, we've seen some examples where it's happened, but I think more to come along the way.
And is there a sustainability angle in all of this?
It depends on how you look at sustainability, right? Because usage of AI and the power and that element of it. And are you actually fundamentally able to drive sustainability in the way? Because if you're sort of revisualizing your processes, can you think of them with sustainability into it as well? I have to confess, that hasn't been the top question to be asked. Now, is it something people think of? Yeah, but it isn't the one that's driving it from the clients that I've sort of seen at this point
of time. Right. Nilesh, can I come to you? So tell us a little bit about the Alcobev industry and your role or your brand's role in it today as Carlsberg, and you have other brands as well. And what are the kind of issues that you're looking at when it comes to application of technology, AI, and then we'll come to agentic later.
Yeah, so I'll make it more broader. So in alcohol industry, it's like any consumer goods industry, right? So what we have done, and we're just embarking on this, our consumer industry is quite complex. So we have decided that we will focus on the front end, which is to really use technology and AI to really understand our consumers, what motivates them to buy goods, etc., what motivates them then eventually to choose beer, what then motivates them to then choose the brands, and then what then motivates them to go and buy again and again the same brand. So one part is the understanding the consumer part. The second part is really all the customer engagement. So customers have technology, we have technology. We want to become not just a seller of product, we want to be a partner in this. And the way we want to do it is use AI and technology to integrate automatic replenishment, understand the consumers who go to restaurants and bars, what they order, and therefore provide them all the information regarding our beers. Carlsberg is a 200-year-old company. We've got a lot of history. We've got a lot of heritage from Denmark, which we can share with consumers so that they choose their preferred beer. So we want to use, that's a third area. The fourth area is, the third area is supply chain. In supply chain, our biggest challenge is, India is a vast country, alcohol is a state-by-state subject, it's quite volatile, is to get the demand and supply right. So, for example, you can take history of what has happened in a state in terms of demand, input all the necessary consumer data, customer data, and then look at history and do some prediction of what could be going forward. And based on that, we can make predictions and keep using it so that it gets better and better all the time. The fourth and the final part is around sustainability. So our passion is water. Before we even use AI, there are many things we can do to fix water issue by reducing, reusing, recycling, and replenishment. But once you have done all of that and you save, so in Carlsberg, we were spending, we were using 4 liters of water to make 1 liter of beer. Today, just by doing the basics, we're using 2 liters of water to make 1 liter of beer. Significant reduction. We want to get down to below 2, and that's where AI can come in. You can put sensors where the leakages happen, look at history of where most leakages will happen, and then be proactive. Before the leak starts, you go and get that washer changed or get that joint repaired, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the basic things that we can start looking at. And I think the final part is that you must get your foundation right, which is the data. Today, you look at multinational companies, they've got data on Excel, they've got data on ERP machines, systems, they've got data in many other places. We need to consolidate all that data in one place, and this is a very big job and big opportunity for young people, and then clean up that data and then use that data to do predictive analysis and things like that, so then give you what future. And finally, always trust but verify. Even machines are not perfect. They can give you wrong answers. It can get you down the rabbit hole, which is, can be quite dangerous, and you could make wrong decisions. So make sure that you have people who know what they're talking about, checking it, auditing, etc., etc.
So are you, you talked about using data and understanding customers better, but are you able to, like some other companies, use old data to get new insights or fresher insights into consumer behavior or project?
Yeah, so I think if you look at it, and I'm not yet an expert in this area, but if you look at AI, you've got the open source versions, the ChatGPT, Copilot. Then you have LLMs that are designed by other companies whom we can partner. And the third part is the one you develop yourself. I think the one you develop yourself is quite tricky for us. It just depends on our data. We are doing partnership with companies. We sign an NDA, which is non-disclosure agreement, so we're able to share data from our source, which is scattered everywhere, and then they bring in their data, and collectively we then make decisions going forward. So they help us clean up and all of those things. So open source is it depends on your company policy. You're putting your data on the system, which is open to everybody, and everybody benefits from it. And is that a good idea to do? I don't know. I mean, ultimately, but it has got a much larger source of data from which it brings all the information. So that can help us even better. But companies can be quite sensitive about putting these things in open source sort of platforms. So yes, we do use our own data, but currently we are partnering a company that's helping us with the customer side so that collectively we can deliver better outcomes. And as you know, AI is all about keep using it, keep practicing it, and keep putting in data so that it gets better and better and better as we human beings did as we were growing up and learning and growing.
I'm going to come back to you on the hierarchy of challenges that you see as far as application of AI goes. Jyotsna, can I come to you now? Tell us a little bit about Bridgestone in India. And it's obviously an old brand. You've been around. You're a Japanese company, for those who didn't know. And tell us about how you use or look at AI as a tool to reinvention.
Bridgestone India, I think you all should be aware, it's a mobility company. It manufactures tires and makes us all move around wherever we would like to go. A very exciting industry because automobile industry forms a major part of all the economies. So it's a good space to be in. And if I look at myself personally, I come at the two ends where there's technology and there's finance. So I understand it much more, I would say, as to what is the need for financing the technologies of future. Coming on to your specific question on AI, I will give one or two examples to correlate. And this doesn't essentially lead to data, but of instances or situations. Very recently in our factory, a whistleblower was received that there is an accident in your factory. And we had no reported accident because accidents are supposed to be reported, particularly if they are at a particular grade. How did this come up? Because someone went to the medical hospital for treatment, and when the questions were asked, it came up that the fingers were stuck in the machine, though it was not informed accordingly. With that whistleblower, we got back into finding out where this happened, because we've got Japanese companies are very high on safety standards. So any single situation can be very alarming. When we went back to look into it, it took us almost 3 months to go and identify what happened, where it happened, how it was covered up. An operator, when he has to stop the machine to remove any material, needs to call his supervisor, who then locks the machine, opens the chain and turns the machine to go and remove the material. This specific operator, he just used the emergency button without calling his superior and tried to pull out the material stuck in the machine. The upper lever dropped and his fingers got chopped out there. He was scared of informing this, so he put his hands in the pocket, went to his supervisor and said, "This has happened, it's fully my responsibility. If this gets reported, everybody's production incentive will be lost, so I don't want this to be reported." And the supervisor got into pressure, walked him out of the factory. And this was not known to anyone. When this case came up after the whistleblow, we tried to check the cameras. The cameras were not focusing well. Few of the cameras were not working. We tried to see the machine stop record, and it did not correlate with what was being said. And this entire process of figuring out what happened took us 3 months, with multiple management meetings where senior leadership is wanting to know what happened. Now, this is legacy system way of finding out what happens on the shop floor. Let's come to future. When we talk about technology, artificial intelligence, what if all of this was correlated? The machines stop and start, the cameras focusing, the gate entry and out records for employees, the insurance claim records and instances of all of this gets recorded in a structured way. I guess these cases would just come to light and got highlighted, resulting in discipline and behavior, resulting in no wastage of management time and being able to get the shop floor much more effective. So I guess this is a very simple instance, which is nothing about data, but it is about human behavior. So how do you train human behavior with the use of technology for their own good is what is one of the case which I learned in the recent, and I thought it's such a good way to see how we could fund to have more safe workplace and build in the culture of ethics amongst the shop floor people. Another example I would like to give here quickly is, if you know the past, since I belong to the finance function primarily, having a 35 years of experience and I've seen every era, right from the telematic machine where you used to key in the numbers till today, where you talk about AI and the data gets analyzed. Now, there is one simple thing, and you all must have all known the case of Metas or Satyam, where how bank balance confirmations were not got timely and how it led to such a big scam. Now, this is a very common thing that every auditor, the best of auditors, Big Fours, send an account confirmation statement to our dealers, customers, to get the confirmation of the balances that the sales have happened. Now, 99% times you never get back the confirmation. That's my experience in 30 years. Now just imagine, we have progressed. Now we have automated confirmations going. There are tools which say that, yes, this is the balance with us. But what if there were multiple APIs generated whereby on a daily basis an outstanding mail is triggered through the ERPs or through other systems that you're using, and it goes to impact their CIBIL rating in that case. Now, all of this would lead to such a high level of governance and monitoring. So these are small use cases. Beyond what we see, a lot more possibility of analytics. So moving from the legacy approach towards working, towards a more liberal way of working, because liberating yourself by doing these repetitive tasks which don't add value, but to focus on the outcomes is what future is going to be towards. So I see a huge, huge shift going to be happening in every industry, and particularly in the world of finance, whereby the use cases are more going to be driving decisions out of the outcomes. It's going to be more autonomous, and we will see a lot more coming up with the use cases in future.
I'm going to come back to you shortly just to sort of finish the chain. Norbert, let me come to you. So we've been talking about AI in a more general sense, but the theme is Agentic AI. How do you see it as an investor in terms of, there's a lot of discussion about hype on Wall Street, for example, and whether everything that we're seeing is.
Yeah, so, as an investor, there are a couple of ways to look at it. One is, of course, how does it impact me running my own firm? So today, already, we are able to stitch together a bunch of off-the-shelf AI tools to make our own decision process much leaner and, effectively get to a 90-95% accuracy answer or output level of, a 2 to 3 member investment analyst team. That's like a direct impact on how we work. But more importantly, how does AI impact how we think about the companies of the future that will create value? Here, I think we think along 2 tracks here. One is companies that are using AI for specific efficiency gains within existing workflows. And there's an art to doing that also. It's not easy, but doing that, and I think several examples have been raised here already, will create value. There's no question about it. But there's a second type of company that we're also very focused on are, whenever there's a large fundamental transformational technology that, becomes very real in terms of capability, new business models get unlocked. Fundamentally new business models. Think of like an Amazon when the internet came. It was a business model that was not possible before the internet. Or an Uber before mobile technology came. Again, a business model that was just not possible before that. So what kind of business model gets unlocked with AI now? It's hard to imagine today. It's almost like something sitting at the intersection of art and technology. What is that business model of the future, which today we cannot think of? We're keenly looking at that kind of activity. And all of that, a lot of that stuff is coming from, folks like you all, youngsters sitting out there who don't have the baggage that we do in terms of technology, in terms of business models. So it's hard to see what that might look like, but I'll tell you, interestingly, we're already starting to see casualties of AI in the business world already. In the US, for example, there's this company called Chegg, which is in ed tech. Barely 3 years ago was valued at 10 billion plus. Basically, in the business of helping students answer their assignments and whatnot, a lot of human intervention. Today, that company is valued at less than 200 million. It's listed. You can go and look at the stock. And the day the stock started sliding was the day ChatGPT started taking over its capabilities. So, hard to imagine what will be investable and create value, but we're seeing the casualties already today. And I'm sure there will be many more such. So we're really looking, even within our portfolio, we're looking offensive. How do you create opportunity using AI, but also defensive? If tomorrow's, our business model is under threat of getting destroyed completely, how do we safeguard ourselves? A bunch of things around this. Again, it's very early days. We are also wrapping our heads around all this, but what scares me is the rate of change. It's crazy. It's just crazy.
Sandhya, let me come to you. So how are you seeing, I know you sit on a board of a lot of auto component companies and some of the largest ones in India. So how are you seeing the approach and the application of AI? What are the kind of issues that they're grappling with, or your boards are grappling with?
Despite all the hue and cry that we are seeing about AI, I think one thing I would like to share with this young audience is the fundamental principles have not changed over the last several decades. Of course, a lot has changed, but I think it has to be reassuring for all of us to know that the fundamental principles remain unchanged. So what do I mean by that? So whether it is the automotive sector or any other domain in which we are trying to plant AI solutions, the starting point is always the value proposition. Unless, no organization can just afford to jump into the AI space and expect magic to happen. It has to build a critical mass of use cases that can be addressed by AI in a way that it is synergistic and aligned to business goals and sustainability goals. Yeah? So that has to be essentially the starting point. And even in the automotive sector, we are seeing companies attempting to identify which are the areas where we are already geared up to be able to introduce AI in a way that the potential benefits exceed the flip side of introducing it and causing fundamental changes within the organization. And that's why, especially for youngsters like all of you, there is a huge, big opportunity because you're not straddled with what already exists. Let me give you a specific example, for instance. In our own Indian innovation ecosystem, we have a company called Vyuha MedData. What it does is it's into cervical cancer screening. So it takes the slide samples for liquid cytology, converts it into digital assets, and AI is used to detect cell anomalies so that the detection rate and the validity of the diagnosis is much, much higher than what used to be done earlier. Imagine the huge value proposition to the customer. What used to be reliant on manual mechanisms, despite good technology in terms of microscopes and others, is now actually left to carefully designed AI algorithms to be able to detect anomalies at a very, very early stage. So this is really huge. And here we have a case where you're building a whole organization around a possibility that is created around AI. Okay? So that's one way to go.
This is the business model example that Norbert was talking about. Yeah.
Absolutely. So many of us still are trying to see when it comes to existing companies, what is the approach that makes sense? That's where startups seem to inherently have an advantage because, as you very rightly pointed out, they're not carrying any baggage. They just start with a potential problem, arrive at a solution, and that becomes your business case. Here you're looking for those use cases and creating that critical mass. So especially in the case of the automotive industry, since that was your question to me, I find that, again, we go back to first principles, as in saying that any technology has to sit on the tripod for people, process, and technology itself. And if there is an imbalance, then it can create chaos. So in the context of AI, what is different is that the process dimension, as very correctly identified by Accenture, has very important connotations. Before AI, during AI, and post-AI implementation. So, any AI solution is as good or as bad as the underlying data strategy. So you have necessarily got to look at process rationalization that ensures data integrity across a large bunch of stakeholders for any AI solution to be meaningful. Then, of course, there is the huge AI opportunity once you build that fundamental data structure. And then you look at how it can be re-engineered considering all that which can come into the automation boundary now. And finally, you're looking at new possibilities for human AI interfaces. And the interesting possibilities arise when you're trying to link up the entire supply chain, because as of now, enterprises were only looking within themselves to be able to arrive at automated solutions. Now the kind of opportunities that AI has thrown up is allowing people to go across the supply chain, preempt some of the potential issues that can come up, and brace themselves for any volatility in the market and so on and so forth. So I think it comes back to fundamentals, as in you start with the value proposition and see how best AI can help you. And of course, the other dimension which has remained the same and yet is different in the AI context is, I think, the people dimension, which I'm sure Lakshmi must be handling very, very well, because in my several decades of experience, I think that is the one dimension which is always the critical success factor. I mean, I think technology, in my humble opinion, is the simplest piece because it is so predictable in terms of the SOPs for implementing it, not necessarily the outcomes. But the people piece is where we need to be very, very careful, whether it is in terms of the awareness issues, the change management issues, and whatever, and especially traditional companies, say in the automotive and other sectors, have to handle that very, very carefully. And I would love to use a term which is used by my dear friend, Professor Narayan Das from Harvard, where he says, look at AI as augmented intelligence. Because the moment as a person or an employee, you look at it as a method of augmenting your capabilities, it becomes a friend and not a foe. So that resistance to change, that fear of what's going to happen to me if AI gets in, is going to be removed. So I think organizations do have to pay attention before they jump headlong into AI implementations.
Okay, thank you for that. I mean, that's an important boardroom perspective on how to approach this. Let me come to you, Lakshmi. Sorry, I know you've been waiting patiently, but also listening to what everyone has been saying. The role of human resources, the whole role of people, and enabling them and preparing them and empowering them to do what we have to do to face this sort of new set of challenges and overcome them. So over to you.
Thank you for kind of setting the context there around the people angle. I think we've got to look at AI not just as an efficiency enhancer or a experience elevator. It is really about redefining a completely new performance frontier for organizations. That's kind of really the bottom line. Of course, we heard a lot about ensuring that the fundamentals of the organization are there, which is really data. If you've got your digital core, that's when you can even think about leveraging AI. And there are two kinds of use I've seen. One is point solutions, which I think AI has demonstrated value already. But when you look at what we've been talking about, process reengineering, and therefore in the context of agentic, that is a little fundamentally shifting. I think Raghu talked about how you've got to look at end-to-end and not just a functional silo. So if you go back to the 80s, when we would all study in MBA school about end process reengineering skills, which then kind of got forgotten along the way, that's what's getting kind of reintroduced in a very, very different way, where you're looking at value, but end-to-end value. And that's an important paradigm, because with this, what is changing is not just the workflows are changing, the decision models are changing, the collaboration models are changing. If I was to kind of build on Nilesh's example of supply chain and kind of translate into an example, say, from within Accenture, for us, our biggest supply is talent, right? If I look at the supply chain model and say internally talent supply, how do I ensure not just my demand is connected in a way to the supply, knowing what the skills are of the people? Earlier, it was easy because I could just match supply to demand and I'm done, right? Staffing decisions get taken that way. With agentic, what I'm able to now do, my autonomous agents are able to kind of talk to people, understand what their aspirations are, help them understand what training they need to pick up to get staffed onto that aspirational job, connect them to those resources, feed that back into their resume, because then they are seen as ready to take on this job, then match the supply to the demand. It's a big shift. It's no longer just efficiency shift, it's an experience shift. It's acting as a career counselor, almost. So I look at all of these paradigms. We also have, I mean, I'm a little more optimistic than you, Norbert, about the leverage of technology, because I think people absolutely, and I love that quote that you talked about, people have to think about not what AI is going to do to them, but what AI is going to do for them, and how can I leverage technology to augment my own creativity. So the big shift, number one, is for people to learn to work with technology. You're going to have autonomous agents directing not just other agents, but other humans as well in the future as they get baked into the workflow. So how do you work collaboratively with humans and technology is going to be one big shift, which leads me to what organizations are not doing enough of today, which is investing in the human capital. 7 out of 10 organizations and CEOs that we speak about are investing significantly in technology, but not enough in their people. Skilling people, and this is very different technology from in the past, where you could just train your technology department on the technology and be done. AI is so much more pervasive. You need to invest in ensuring there's AI literacy across 100% of our organization. And that's the journey we've been on with, more than 70,000 of our people are AI fundamental trained. More than 50,000 of our professionals in Accenture globally are experts in AI. But that is a critical investment, not just in a particular department, but across the breadth of the organization.
And your target would be 350,000 people in India?
I'm talking about 780,000 people globally. So that would be the target audience that we're looking at. Because everybody, us is not a India only, we kind of pull in talent from across different countries. So that's number one, which is how do you make sure 100% of your organization is AI conversant, literate, and then you have deep technologists, specialists as well. The second shift, I know you talked about having some subject matter expertise, Nilesh, I agree with you, but having said that, AI is going to democratize expertise and experience in a way never seen before. If I take an example of, in the context of the bank, for example, if you needed 10 years of experience to approve loans of a certain value, because you had a ton of experience behind that decision-making ability, that expertise and experience, if you have the digital core, gets captured in a very different way, and someone fresh out of campus can perhaps approve those loans as well, because you have access to that experience in a digital way. Now, therefore, the skills that people need to be looking to invest in themselves and organizations need to invest in them is not just functional, it's multidimensional. It's functional in the context of the industry, it's technology, it's craft skills, all of it bundled together. And at the core of AI is that it's human-centric. That is the core of the design, right? And so therefore, some of the human skills, whether it be decision-making, whether it be ethical judgment, whether it be empathy, whether it be adaptability, those are the skills that organizations must also therefore invest in. So the shifts are a big time shift towards investing even more in people, because that's when you take people along in the journey, you create trust, and you get them to kind of work along with technology versus being afraid of technology.
Right, I think that sort of gives us a very useful kind of overview. Here's an audience which is on the path to doing some of the things that you want them to do. So what's your advice to them at this point of time? I mean, because you talked about an interesting blend. You're saying learn about technology, learn about everything, but more importantly, learn about values and empathy and judgment and so on. So how do you find time to balance all of this?
Well, like I was telling some of them yesterday, learning, if they thought it got done at the end of 2 years of MBA or 1 year of whichever year you're in, it's never going to stop. All of us continue to learn. At Accenture, we've got something called technology quotient that everyone needs to have, including someone in HR. It is not a good to have because I just have a curious bent of mind. It is critical to my role as well to understand the business of the business for me and to shape out the talent strategy that really helps the people. But how do you do that, right? I mean, there are enough and more, like I said, all of this information and knowledge is now democratized. We have our resources to train our people, but you have access in the public domain as well. If you choose to join Accenture, we have Udacity, we've got our own learning resources. That's access to learning. Organizations that do not invest in learning, they are at the risk of not remaining relevant as a firm, resilient as a firm, and they're not enabling their people to remain relevant and marketable. But they're different, people have different ways of learning. The way I learn, like Nilesh, is from, I have a 24-year-old son myself, and so therefore I learn from him. I learn from my peers when I attend, I'm part of NASCOM as well as FICCI, so when I interact with my colleagues, I look at how they are solving their business problem, like the supply chain problem, like I said. That's not my business, but I can apply a supply chain problem, but in the context of talent. How do you learn from peers to see application across different industries? One particular solution you learn from peers. And I'll spend time with team members to kind of, to really understand what they are doing to kind of learn from them. I call it a shift methodology. That's what I've called myself, tell it to myself. S stands for skills. How do I continue to build the right skills? H is really about how this technology is going to be, I mean, we're in a world where it's going to be tech-led but human-enabled. So that H stands for how do I remain human? How do I remain centered on values and ethics? And I think my 2-year MBA from XLRI continues to remain very, very relevant. One of the few courses we were absolutely required to take was management ethics. And that has become even more central to a pedagogy in an MBA school today, in my view. That is the H. I is influence because, like I said, that is what's going to be, how do you influence people to kind of align them? F is fortitude or resilience, which is absolutely critical. Things are going to be bumpy. Careers are bumpy, technology experiences are going to be bumpy, so how do you remain resilient? And T, of course, is together, because we've got to do this together with technology, with people. So that's my framework, and that's how I encourage my teams also to create safe spaces for them to experiment along the way.
Interesting. Thank you for that. So let's get a quick wrap up, and let me begin with you, Norbert, and come back. It's really a 1-minute question, or maybe even less, given the time that we have. The question that we started with, or the poser, was driving process reinvention. Poser to everyone was, how do you see it from your vantage point? And how do you use Agentic AI, or how do you drive this process reinvention through Agentic AI? So you could look at maybe a challenge as and an opportunity in the context that we've been talking about so far. And let's start with you, Norbert.
No, I think clear opportunity, because a lot of legacy businesses, a lot of new businesses will find a lot of power in exploiting some of these technologies to make their processes leaner, more efficient, more in tune with the customers that they're serving. So there's, without a doubt, it is a positive. I think that's the way we look at it from even running our own investment firm.
You know, Lakshmi said that she was not as pessimistic as you.
No, so I'm not pessimistic.
Because as a technology, I mean, you have to invest on either side, wherever the opportunity is, right?
No, it's not a zero-sum game for us. We can invest in a portfolio of companies that are thematically aligned with each of these.
Got it.
So I don't see it as either or. But what my point was that a disproportionate value will get created by fundamentally new business models. I'm not taking away from the fact that substantial value will get created by existing firms intelligently harnessing these technologies. Not taking away from that.
Got it. Sandhya?
I think broadly, there is a safe aspect and a not so safe aspect to it. The safe aspect will definitely delve into that areas where we have the underlying data, authentic data, and very clearly defined business rules. And that's where you can start to operate in a harmony with the ecosystem instead of a standalone player. And that's where maximum value will accrue to organizations, regardless of which domain they're operating out of. The not so safe area is when you're actually going to leave it to AI to take the judgmental call. And I think that is where youngsters will have to learn to update and hone their skills in terms of how to be a more powerful validator of what AI tells me. Yeah? So that is a slightly less unexplored area, but I'm seeing positives in both.
Okay. Nilesh, I think, and let me, if I can add, apart from challenges and an opportunity, what should young people, what should they be doing to stay relevant in this world? And you know, I mean, I posed a version of that question to Lakshmi as well, so it's to you too.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, it's here. Second, it's moving fast. And the third, it's going to be transformative. That's a fact of life. I think we should not get into FOMO, fear of missing out, and panic and all of that, so stay calm. I think in our case, for example, we have a 5-year vision for the company. Suddenly, ChatGPT comes, and then we think, wow, the world has changed. So the first thing we did with the leadership, some of us like me are from the Bronze Age, so it's very relatively new. So we all decided, the entire leadership team, to learn about AI. That's the first thing we did. All the buzzword, hallucination, bias, all of this stuff, right? So we went on a 20-week learning campaign. And then we came back and looked at our vision for the 5 years and said, what can we automate? And then we saw, or use AI for. Once we decided on that, the next thing really was to make sure there's a steering committee, and there is an audit committee that just monitors everything within the team that's working on. And then what we said is, we can't do a single project in this. We have to experiment. So we empowered our people in supply chain to go and use whatever AI tools that we have globally approved and start working on it, learn from it, experiment from it. So we have done 2 projects, one in the supply chain to go in, 3 projects actually. One is from supply chain, a lot of our young people to just use the tools, put the data in, experiment and learn. And as you put more and more data, it becomes better and better, and then you get better and better answer. The second part was in the front end, as I talked about consumers and customers. And the third part was actually HR on recruitment and how do we make sure we bring the right people who fit into the organization. If we can do all of this, we can't have a single project like an ERP project or an IT project. It needs to be a learn as you go along experimentation. And then we'll see. The outcome has not come yet. We've just embarked on that journey. But I think that's where best way to do is just keep trying and learning and experiment.
Joseph, what's your sense of being future ready in this sort of AI world or AI-led world?
I think it almost follows the same, learning ourselves, educating people around us, and being ready to adapt to it. Because there's no way you can stay away from it, and there's no need to fear it. It's only going to enhance the future if you learn to adopt it and use it more effectively. Yes, there will be fear of job losses, fear of skills or reskilling for people that will be required. But I guess over a period of time, lot more will evolve, where those fears will get eliminated and we'll see a better world of future with AI.
Okay, and is there a sort of personal challenge that you've set for yourself in this context?
Yes, certainly. That I'm coming very close to my next phase of work life. I think this is a very interesting space for me to get much more deeper in understanding AI and its impact in the financial world, and trying to develop models around how, and I was just discussing yesterday with someone, in the financial world, what it is all about is delivery. And you deliver with reference to a budget. And how to really strengthen your budget by using a lot more data, because that's where it starts, demand, economies, and trying to be able to work along to define this, to use much more predictive analysis using different tools is what I would focus my time on, go and learn much more around it.
Gunjan, how do you see this challenge or path ahead of using AI for reinvention? I mean, you used to work for a biscuit company earlier, and I'm sure they too are using a lot of AI to figure out particularly. But it's interesting. I think there's a split of time between how much you want to use AI for supply chains, understanding input costs, managing inputs, versus, of course, the consumers, which you've talked about. So tell us about how you see this and what you can share.
No, I think there is a very common strand that we are getting to here, right? I think it starts off with AI literacy, right? Itself engaging with the entire topic, understanding what are the possibilities, etc. And I think a disproportionate focus needs to go there, rightly so, because if you're able to democratize this entire, at least the engagement with the topic itself is a big shift, right? That itself will spawn off a whole bunch of innovative business models inside or outside. I think the next step after that is going to be how do you play an enabler role for ideally young talent to basically emerge with various ideas and what are the use cases. I think the critical piece in this is that it's in many cases right now, it's still a buzzword, right? Where are you converting into business cases, creating outcomes, and therefore business impact is very critical, and therefore nudging people towards that, right? While you have engaged and hopefully empowered with ideas. The last one, I think, and I don't even know what are the various implications, but I guess the speed at which it's evolving is going to be data, process, security. How are we making sure that it's responsible usage? Some of the stuff that I've read on this can, literally spawn off into very scary scenarios when autonomous bots start working on their own, right? Agentic stuff. So, but I think we're still some way away from reaching that level, but I guess we will reach there pretty fast. Last but not the least, I think it's more reverse mentoring. I think we need more understanding of AI than the youngsters. I have seen my son, it's a 13-year-old guy. The guy is using ChatGPT in ways that even I don't know how to use. In fact, I think this entire communication seems to be the reverse flow of water. We should be hearing from them more than we speaking here.
Right, Kunjan, thank you so much. And we've sort of completely run out of time and over time. So thank you all for this enlightening discussion on artificial intelligence and agentic AI and how companies, and we've heard some very interesting examples of how companies are prioritizing what they're doing and what they need to ensure that this world, or rather their worlds, are ready for this new world. And the role of, the very critical role of talent, and that's where you all come in, that is going to help drive the innovation that we're going to see. So thank you very much once again, and thank you for inviting me.